Hello, my name is Rosemary Benson, and I'm here today to share with you how to make an apple pie. Don't you just love apple pie? You could hardly wait for it to be done baking, and you could smell the cinnamon and apples baking together in that oven. Imagine eating that apple pie. So many memories are evoked. You think of times with your family, after dinner, and on special occasions. You remember those feelings and memories that were created that came all from eating apple pie. Today I'm going to share with you how to make apple pie and all the steps to making your own wonderful creation. One day as a teenager, I asked my mother how to make an apple pie, and her answer to me was to hand me the recipe written on a 3x5 index card. I've been making apple pie since that day for nearly 50 years now. I have refined the recipe, and I have developed my own techniques. I've used different flours, sugars, shortening, and a variety of apples. But believe me, I've received thousands of compliments from many happy eaters. Making apple pie takes patience, but your own homemade apple pie can help you to get to the heart of others. In addition to being satisfied with your own creation and being able to eat your apple pie, you can make others happy too. It can also help you to influence others. Now, I know this is not the only thing, but I do know that my apple pie helped attract my husband to me. This is why I want to share with you how to make your own apple pie. I want to make sure that you have what you need to get started with the ingredients, the utensils, the techniques of putting it together, and ways that you can make it your own. Let's start with what you're going to need to make your own apple pie with a list of ingredients and utensils. Now, starting with the ingredients, for the crust, you'll need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2/3 a cup of shortening, 1/4 a teaspoon of salt, and 6 to 7 tablespoons of ice cold water. Now for the filling, you'll need 7 to 8 apples that are peeled, cored, and sliced, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and 1 cup of brown sugar. For the utensils, let's start with talking about the rolling pins. And this information came from Test Kitchen's Tips, Rolling Pins 101. There are 2 types of rolling pins. There is a marble rolling pin. The marble rolling pin is really good because it's nice and heavy, and it makes it easier to roll out the dough. And also it stays cooler, so it keeps your shortening cooler and it helps it from not warming up too much from you rolling it out. The second one is the hardwood rolling pin. It's known as the American or baker's rolling pin. It's usually easily accessible, and either or rolling pin will work today. Pie pans. Since we're going to be making 2 crusts that are either 8 or 9 inch, I'd like to talk to you about the type of pie pans you could use. This information came from Megan Gordon's Baking Tips and Choosing the Right Pan. The 2 pans that I'd like to talk about are a glass pie pan first. That's the one that I prefer. It allows the pie to bake slow and even and causes the crust to get a nice even browning. The metal is good. It's usually a little less expensive, easy to find. It can rust, it can bend, and if you've got a special coating on your pan when you're trying to cut out all those nice pieces of pie, you could ruin that protective coating. You'll need a flat, clean surface to roll out your dough. You'll need 2 bowls, 1 bowl for the apples and 1 for the pie dough. For peeling your apples, you can use a regular knife, or you can use a core slicer, or you can use a peeler core slicer. Now, I like to use one of those when I'm making a lot of apple pies because it does peel, core, and slice the apples all at once. To combine the dough, you can use your hands or you can purchase a pastry cutter. Now that you have all the things you need to make your apple pie, let's move on to the technique of putting it together. For the filling, take those apples that are peeled, cored, and sliced and place them into the bowl. Mix in the sugar. And if your apples are a little bit juicy, you can add a little bit of flour in there. You can mix it by hand or with a spoon. For the crust, combine the flour and shortening in a bowl. You use your hand or the pastry cutter, and you can combine it until you get like a pea-type consistency. Once that's done, you want to add your ice cold water in by tablespoon until it all comes together. Now this next part comes from how to make the perfect pie crust from What's Cooking America. And it reminds us to not overmix our dough, because if you do so, it'll become tough. Take that dough now and divide it into 2 pieces. Shape it into discs. Take 1 disc and throw a little flour out on your flat surface so it doesn't stick when you roll out your dough. Roll your dough out from the center in all directions until it's round. When you think it's large enough, I'll place my pie pan over the top to kind of measure. But to transfer it, I will fold the pie dough in half. I'll put the open edges nearest me and the fold in the middle, and then I unfold it into the pan. I'll fit it into the pan, and then I'll run a knife around the edges to clean off any excess. At this point in time, I take the apples and add them into the pie pan. Now this will look like too many apples, but don't let that be a concern because those apples are going to cook down. For the top crust, roll it out the same as you did at the bottom. Place it over the top and trim and seal the edges. Now at this point you can make your own type of unique seal. It's almost like your own signature. I can tell from looking at different seals who made the pie. You will need to make holes in the top of your pie to allow steam to get out. You can use a knife or you can use a fork, and sometimes I'll make it in the shape of the A since we're making an A for apple pie. You want to bake your pie in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes to an hour until it's golden brown. Once you take it out, you can eat it warm or you can save it for later and eat it cold. Now that you've made your apple pie, let's talk about how you can make it to your own specific needs. There are different ways to sweeten your apple pie. You can use brown sugar or white sugar, or you can use a combination of two. You can use a sugar substitute, but follow the guidance on the back of the sugar substitute that you're using. With your apples, you can combine them with dried raisins, dried cranberries, cherries. You can reduce the sugar, you can leave it as is, or if you're like my sister-in-law, she likes me to bake her pies with no sugar at all and only use the dried fruits to help with the sweetening. You're choosing your apples. This information came from How to Make the World's Best Apple Pie from pickyourown.org. Now it talks about if you want to pick apples that you like to eat. Do you like sweet apple? Choose sweet apples. If you like tart apples, use tart. Again, I want to remind you that if the apples are a little juicy, go ahead and add a little flour in them to help out with the thickening as they bake. Now firmness is an important thing to consider. If the apple isn't going to hold up the baking, you don't want a mushy apple pie. So that's why my preference through all these years has turned out to be Granny Smith apples. You have a choice of shortening. Now I use Crisco. My main preference is butter flavor, but you can also use plain. You can use butter. Butter allows for you to have a flakier crust. If you use butter, make sure you cut it up small and that you're using cold, unsalted butter. Or a lot of times I'll use a combination of butter and Crisco. Now spices. You can make your own apple pie spice mix. I looked at this one recipe from Apple Pie Spice Mix from All Recipes, and they talked about combining a mixture of nutmeg, cinnamon, allspice, ginger, and cardamom. But you can use all of them. You can leave out the ones that you don't like or you don't have, or you can just use cinnamon, and that's what I use. Now flour is another way to choose to make your own apple pie your own. If you need to use gluten-free flour, then use gluten-free. You can use whole wheat flour, but I will tell you that it does come out a little bit grainy. If you want to use whole wheat, I would recommend using 1/2 wheat and 1/2 all-purpose. But, of course, I will remind you that all-purpose flour is the best flour to use to make an apple pie. Now that you know how to make an apple pie, let's go over what I've shared with you today. I have provided for you a list of ingredients, the utensils you'll need. I've showed you techniques of how to put it together, and I have shown you ways to make the apple pie to meet your own specific needs. Baking apple pie takes patience. Your pie may not be perfect, but I guarantee it's still going to be juicy and delicious. I also can guarantee that your friends and your family are going to enjoy eating it, and they're just going to love you for making that apple pie. Learning how to make apple pie is a labor of love. You can make your own apple pie and begin creating more and new memories.